Now let's take you to Lhasa, where officials are doing what they can to promote a Chinese-Tibetan bilingual education system. The Tibetan language, they say, is a major component of primary schooling. Zhu Yan has more.
This is the third-year classroom at Lhasa's #1 primary school. The children are all under 10, but they can write beautiful Tibetan.
I like Tibetan classes because there are a lot of poems and stories in our Tibetan textbooks.
This was the first ordinary primary school to open in Tibet. More than 70% of the children are Tibetan, and they study the Tibetan language in 30% of their classes. This helps students adapt to Tibetan language education after they enter into high schools or universities, and promotes the dissemination and inheritance of Tibetan culture. They also have learned Tibetan folk songs and playing traditional Tibetan musical instruments. Tibetan language education is widespread in primary and secondary schools throughout the autonomous region. Test papers for courses teaching in the Tibetan language must be answered in Tibetan, and high schools and universities consider applicants' ability in the Tibetan language.
Tibetan language education is thriving. Tibetan education was never so widespread in Old Tibet.
The University of Tibet has now been training Tibetan teachers for secondary schools for 19 years. There are now more than 13,000 Tibetan language teachers, and there are more than 22,000 ethnic minority teachers, most of them in farming and pastoral areas. 主页 CCTV